welcome to today's video. I'm in my E46 M3, and as you guys might know, I have a lot of cars, and there's a reason why I have each one, so I figured I'd actually make a multi-part series reviewing the cars that I own and why I own them. So as I'm heading to this canyon road, what actually makes a good car a good car? Is it the drivability? Is it the daily use? Is it gas mileage? Especially this day and age. Is it the performance? Is it the power? Is it the handling? Is it something about the chassis? So let's go over a little bit of the history of the E46 M3. It's the successor of the tried and true E36 M3. I've had probably about 3 or 4 E36 M3s, and I actually prefer the E46 chassis a little bit more, although it was a little bit expensive at the time for me to have a project car as an E46 M3. So luckily this car popped up for 8,500 bucks in Utah. Had to rush out there because there's a ton of people looking at this thing, and it was originally an SMG car, so automatic, and I converted it to manual, and this is where we are today. I've owned a lot of different cars in my day. I've owned anywhere from a 95 Nissan Pathfinder to a Honda Civic. I had a Subaru STI. I had tons of BMWs, lots of different cars, and E30s even. I really prefer the E46 over basically any car that I've had, just because of the drivability of it. You can jump in the car and grab groceries one day and rip the canyons the next. So as long as your suspension is in good working order, all your bushings are in good shape, these cars ride extremely well. They're nice and comfortable, and they're also aggressive when you want them to be. You can take a stock suspension car and bring it to the track or a canyon road and still have a lot of fun. So that's why I kind of like these chassis. The other thing is they have 50-50 weight distribution, and they're kind of built on the E36 geometry. So a lot of the control arms, rear suspension, everything is kind of a beefed up version. Same design as the E36, but a little bit more beefed up and can handle more load, cornering load. So these feel a little bit more solid than an E36. And I think the chassis itself is a little bit more rigid. Alright, one other thing with drivability, it's kind of hard to put on a 1 to 10 scale, but drivability also has to do with the refinement of the controls of the vehicle, because at the end of the day, you are connected to those controls: the steering, the throttle, the brakes, the clutch, the shifter. So all those things have to work perfectly in your favor, and the more smoother you can be with your inputs, the better the car is going to react, and the more you're going to enjoy that car. I've had cars where I've had super aggressive clutches on them, and really aggressive short shifters, and they just weren't enjoyable to drive. And in stock form, the E46 is checks all those boxes. The steering rack is quick enough to where I'm on this canyon road and I am coming actually up on a hairpin right here. Look at my steering input. So I'm not multi-hand over, turning the steering wheel 4 million times. It's got that right ratio on the steering rack where it's not too loose and not too twitchy, just right. One thing I would say about the throttle input is there's a sport mode button and a normal driving mode. When you're in normal driving mode, the throttle is a little bit laggy down low, so I think that has to do with daily drivability, and BMW wanted the car to be easy to drive. But when you put the car in sport mode, it sharpens things up, and it's almost too sharp. So what a lot of people do with these is they throw an Evolve tune on it, or I think they call it a Spec B tune, and it kind of makes the throttle input a little bit more linear and easier to drive. Alright, let's talk about the power of these cars. So they make 333 horsepower stock, and I think actually the Euro version has a little little bit more because it has the Section 1 headers that don't have cats in them. And of course, with our emissions laws here, we have to have cats, so power was choked down a little bit. But to the wheels, these cars dyno at anywhere from like 260 horsepower to 280 to the wheels. So they're pretty fun cars. I wouldn't say they're the most powerful thing out there, but the thing that makes, you know, kind of puts a cherry on top is the red line. These motors, the fact that it has ITBs and a manifold design that can breathe a lot of air at higher RPM, these cars stock rev to, I believe, 8,000 or 8,200 RPM, and you can safely rev them to about 8,500 RPM. So this, in a way, is almost like an S2000, the fact that it can rev high, but it's a 3.2 liter inline six. So pretty cool. It's amazing that it has ITB stock. One thing a lot of people do actually is convert the drive-by-wire to an actual throttle cable to make the throttle more responsive. So I don't know why BMW would pair ITBs with a throttle actuator motor. So it's a little bit disconnecting from the driving experience. For people that live in warmer climates or track use, this isn't really talked about a lot on the E46s, but the cooling system stock is fairly capable. The only thing is you might want to upgrade the radiator to like a CSF or something, but with that massive oil cooler that goes across the entire bottom of the radiator stock, you have a lot of cooling capacity, and you can have laps and laps of track use and not go into limp mode, which is nice, or overheat, and keep those oil temps down. And I believe the later models and some of the earlier models, they have cooling fins on the rear differential. So as you're cornering, those LSD clutch packs in the rear end will kind of heat up and bind, and it's not a great experience, but BMW kind of compensated for that. Let's talk about some drawbacks. So the S54 engine is a little bit finicky sometimes. Some of the common problems are getting the cooling system as they age, because they're partially made out of plastic. They can burst, so the expansion tanks and the radiators can burst. Sometimes the clutch fans can also randomly explode because, again, they're made out of plastic and they're spinning super fast. And then, of course, you have the rod bearings, which I just did the job myself. Not the craziest thing in the world. You just have to drop the oil pan, change your bearings out, as long as they're in good shape. Really not too bad of a job. Just need a torque wrench and just take your time. They do need valve adjustments every, I believe, like 20 or 30,000 miles. It might be longer than that, but most of the time when people check them, they're usually in spec anyways, and unless you're living on the red line, most people don't need to worry about it. Subframe cracking issues, I think it has more to do with people that run coilovers and heavier suspension, and people that drive on rough roads or hit a lot of potholes. You can get subframe tearing, and normally the fix is you put the reinforcement plates in. If it's bad enough, cracked, you do have to replace the entire kind of rear tub, and BMW does still sell the entire rear tub, and you just essentially have someone cut out the floor and weld a new one in. Not the worst thing in the world. It's not like the car's completely totaled if that did happen, but it's something to keep in mind. Also, maintenance-wise, just be aware they run 1060 oil in these, and the oil is actually kind of hard to find unless you buy it online. It's kind of difficult to find it locally, and you end up paying about 120 upwards for an oil change. So that's a filter and the oil itself. Okay, so now the question is going to be, is this car worth buying in 2022? I would say yes and no. I would say probably if you can find a clean example for under 20,000, it might be worth it, but these guys that are paying like over 20 grand for an E46 M3, I think are absolutely insane. Like, yeah, it's a good car, but I mean, look at what else you could buy for, you know, $25,000-$30,000, you can buy a brand new sports car like a BRZ or something modern that has, you know, almost the same amount of power sometimes, these new turbo cars, and you know, you have the benefits of a warranty and stuff like that. I think people that are buying these cars are more for the BMW nostalgia and, you know, the M Heritage, and this was really one of the last M cars if you think about it. Now when I say M car, I mean true M car, like an actual motorsports car. So this motor being high revving and ready to pretty much race right out of the box, I think is really saying something. And the E36 that we got was kind of muted, of course, for the US markets, and was not really technically an M car, I would say. When they jumped to the E46, they said, oh, okay, this time we're actually going to make a real M car with a real M motor, suspension, do the whole thing correctly, the way our customers want it. Like, even if I was super wealthy, unless I had an entire M collection of every single M car, from like an E30 M3 to E36, E46, F chassis, E90s, I would maybe splurge and get a better example of an E46 for a complete collection. But as a standalone car, I mean, I could not just justify spending like over $20,000. There's absolutely no way. And that's why mine, I mean, yeah, it's rough around the edges, but sub 10K car, M car like this, that's pretty rare. So I had to just jump on it. So like I said, I think it's worth buying in 2022 if you can find a good deal, but again, it's a stretch for any examples that are like super clean, low mileage. I mean, I couldn't splurge that much money on something like that because it's just barely marginally better. If you think about it, a low mileage car sometimes is going to have more maintenance issues than a higher mileage daily driven car, because those seals like to dry rot when they're not moving or spinning or being exercised. The rubber likes to dry rot and you run into all kinds of issues. Even this car was sitting, I think, for like almost 5 years before I manually swapped it because he couldn't figure out the SMG issues. And yeah, it's just a lot of the chassis bushings are just completely clapped on this car. It may not seem like it because it does still drive fairly good, but I need to do the rear bushings and the rear subframe bushings and, you know, all that good stuff. If you guys are enjoying these videos and some of the nice B-roll, you can thank this cinema camera. It's a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and it's kind of complicated to use. It's really for professionals, but once you get everything set up and dialed in, get some really good images. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Let me know what you guys thought of that review, and I think I'm actually going to do my supercharged E36 next to review, just because it's similar year-ish to this, with a road track supercharger on it, making like 8 PSI, and I just need to get some new tires for that. I haven't really been driving it much. It needs a little bit of a tune, but I should be reviewing that car soon, so let me know what you guys think. And I'm also going to be doing a review on the M4 and probably the Z06 too, even though it's for sale, but I figured to get a little bit of a review out of it just so people know what they're like before they buy them. So thanks for watching, and comment below what you think about the E46. Definitely an interesting car. I think the M division of BMW did a really good job on this car, and I like it, and that's why I bought it. And this is actually my second one. My first one I had for about 2-3 years back in Tucson. But yeah, see you guys on the next one.